Hello, Dallas. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all my global viewers. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you for joining a live program for FB and YouTube. And welcome to my show, Global Gupshup. This is an Asian news presentation, and I'm your host, Anu Benakatti, taking you all on an exciting journey every time with me to meet extraordinary guests on every episode. So this should be a very good morning for Dallas. So before we start, I have to say today we will find out from experts many secrets, solutions, trends, pros and cons of investing in real estate and everything that we want to know about real estate. Any kind of property, I have to say, whether it's a residential or a commercial, it can be an exciting and it's a good investment opportunity. If we think of some of the reasons, like why should we invest and what are the pros and cons? Well, if I can think of some, investing in real estate are it gives you having a sense of belonging, and also it could be a feeling of like a tangible asset, if we can say that, and also it tend to appreciate in value over time, and also it may offer a better return than the stock market, if I can say that. And also, or it could be your source of income, like if you want to invest in a commercial property. So more than anything, folks, if you ask me, it will fulfill your dream of having or owning a house, and belongingness, that sense of belonging, that's what I'm referring to. So, well, don't you think, it's every American dream? I think so. But, well, we'll find out. So let me introduce our guest today. So let me introduce my first guest. He holds the Gold Mayfield Professorship in the Department of Finance and Real Estate, College of Business, University of Texas at Arlington. And he was Robert M. Stanton Chair in Real Estate in the Department of Finance and Strom College of Business, Old Dominion University, and of the director of the E.V. Williams Center of Real Estate. He was also a visiting professor of real estate in the Department of Risk Management at the Pennsylvania State University. So let me invite and welcome Dr. Andrew Hansz to the show.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. I apologize about being in the car. My university, UTA, University of Texas Arlington, had spring break last week, and I'm on my way home from spring break. So, but nice to be here.
Absolutely, Dr. Hansz, and appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for joining. And definitely it will be a great show that, with you sharing your ideas and all the wisdom that you have. And let me also introduce our next guest. He's an associate professor in the Department of Finance and Real Estate and the director of the Ryan Riley Center of Urban Land Utilization at the College of Business at the University of Texas at Arlington. And he earned his PhD in finance and real estate and MSc in industrial engineering from Arizona State University and BE in mechanical engineering from University of Madras, India. Well, during the summer of 2009 and 2010, he received an honored invitation to be a visiting scholar at the Federal Bank of Chicago's Banking Supervision and Regulation Division, where he conducted research on mortgage loans from a regulation and policy perspective. So let me invite and welcome Dr. Sriram Villupuram to the show.
Good morning from Dallas, everyone. And I guess a good evening from India.
Absolutely. And everyone is watching globally. And so it is a great, informative show for UT Arlington students, as well as everyone who is willing to make this one as their profession, and also who are in the profession. Then probably many questions will be answered as well. So, before we start, how about getting a little bit, so that in brief, would you please introduce yourself and your role in UT Arlington? How about we start with Dr. Sriram?
All right. So I'm the Associate Professor of Finance and Real Estate here at UT Arlington. I primarily teach real estate classes, real estate finance, real estate investing, and then I also teach international finance. On top of that, I am the advisor for the MS in Real Estate program. It's been on for the last several decades, and I've been advisor for the last 7 years for the program. On top of that, I'm a director for the Ryan Riley Center for Urban Land Utilization, which was started in the mid-'80s. The primary goal is to do a lot of outreach work, work with the community, and give presentations on current issues and such. So, for example, in Texas in 2004, around 2014, 2015, oil prices were dropping because of an oversupply of shale oil production. And the first question that came into everyone's mind was, what does that mean to real estate? So those are the types of outreach work that we do at the Ryan Riley Center for Urban Land Utilization.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And let me turn this one to Dr. Hansz.
Yes, I'm also in the Department of Finance and Real Estate, and we're in the College of Business, of course, at University of Texas, Arlington. I first started at UTA in 1999, and I've left for a little while, but I came back in 2019, and my role in the Department of Finance and Real Estate, I specialize more on the real estate area. Although I've taught 14 different courses in finance and real estate, I'm teaching mainly real estate courses right now, and mainly graduate real estate courses in the Masters of Science in Real Estate program that Dr. V, the students call Sriram Dr. V, so I call him Dr. V out of habit, but I teach mainly in the graduate program that Dr. V advises for.
Well, thank you, Dr. Andrew. That really is great, and thank you so much for coming. So let's start with today. We will be talking about and learning about everything that we want to know about real estate, its trends, investment, foreclosure, and whatnot. So there's a lot of information that we have questions on, but before we even begin and get into the depth of the details, let's, in brief, about talk about what are the different types and what kind of properties that would come under these categories, if I may ask. Like any one of you could just answer that.
Okay, I could start if it's okay with Dr. V. But
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's not one real estate market. Like we kind of have a big stock market, and if you want to know how the stock market did yesterday, you could look at something like the Dow Jones Index or the NASDAQ.
Mm-hmm.
But real estate markets are a little different. They're very segmented and local.
Mm-hmm.
They're segmented by property type first.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the four major property types in commercial real estate include office, retail, industrial warehouse, and multifamily. And then there's the single family market that I know everybody's familiar with, because a lot of your listeners own houses, and everybody needs some place to live. So everybody's very familiar with the single family residential side of the real estate market. But on the commercial side, the four major categories are office, retail, industrial warehouse, and multifamily. And then there's some additional specialty sectors like hotels and self-storage warehouses and those kind of specialty uses. But real estate markets are also defined by geography. Mm-hmm. So whenever you talk about a real estate market, you pretty much have to tell me what property type are you talking about, right, and where is it located? Mm-hmm. Because real estate markets are very localized, and they can act very differently, based on the property type and also the location of the market. So Dallas, Texas real estate might be doing very well in warehouse, in industrial, but the retail market in California might be doing very poorly. Okay. So when we talk about real estate markets, we got to talk about what property type and what geography are we talking about.
Well, thank you. So since we already know this one, so why don't we start a little bit in detail briefly that about each one of them? So starting with the residential. So the one of the, like what you just said, that, the area and the value and all that. So the one of the things that we need to consider is the land development. So Dr. Sriram, you want to take that and just elaborate a little bit about when, what needs to be considered when it comes to the land development?
So first thing is capital. Real estate is a capital-intensive industry.
Okay.
Everyone uses leverage. In simple terms, leverage is a fancy name for loans.
Right.
They borrow to build things. And borrowing is easier for real estate because, as you mentioned at the very beginning, when you introduced this show, real estate is special compared to stocks and bonds and others in that it has regular cash flows. If you do everything right, it has regular cash flows. So it's easier to go get a loan on it. And banks understand real estate. It's not, you're not going out and saying, I am trying to develop a new product. This is going to be the fastest computer in the world that I'm trying to develop. It's not like anything like that. It's fairly simple in that sense that a banker understands. So everybody tries to get capital. So for land development, the first piece is what are the borrowing rates, number one. As of now, borrowing rates are pretty low. They're some of the lowest still, despite the fact that they have started to increase over the last month or so. The second is availability of land. That's where supply and demand comes into play. There are two types of people in this land development business. One that buy land in advance and wait.
Right.
For them, it's a matter of using their own capital and investing in that land and basically sitting on it until the right time comes.
Right. Right.
And others buy land and develop. And so for the first type, which is buy land and wait, you cannot unfortunately use capital for buying that land. But when you start developing, you can go to the bank and start to buy land. So capital and land availability, interest rates are low for the last few years in general, compared to the last, previous decade. But unfortunately in Dallas, as well as, some of the areas where you're hearing about home prices going up,
right,
land availability is shrinking. When I say land availability, everyone, keeps saying that Texas has a lot of land.
Right.
The key thing to think about is developable land.
Land. Right. Right.
So when you look at land development, it happens in circles in the sense that when you have a new housing development, that's going to come right next to a development that just got done.
Right. Right.
So you can develop way far out. Yes, there's land available out there if you drive 50 miles north of, for example, Plano. So land availability is a big thing, and that has been the hardest part in real estate development lately in the Dallas Metroplex and many areas where there is desirability.
Right.
And the third thing is, if you want to develop, who's going to come live in there?
Right.
The good news is Dallas-Fort Worth has been getting, the whole metro area has been getting approximately 250 people are moving in every day.
Wow.
That's how many people are moving out of Chicago, just to give you an example.
Right.
So what does that do to development in general? These people need place to live. One is they're either going to buy. If they have saved up enough capital, they could buy right away, or they're going to go rent. It's going to be one of the two. So there's going to be demand for those two categories of real estate: residential, single family, townhome, condo, or they're going to go rent. So that's going to increase demand for multifamily. So multifamily in general has been very healthy in the Metroplex over the last decade or so because of this in-migration. And then everyone's coming to Texas. This is not Colorado. They're not coming here to ski or buy a second home. They're coming here to work. They're coming here for employment, which means before they decided to come, their employer has already moved in here. So that means demand for office is also in there. With the economy moving more towards e-commerce, with retail and everything going towards e-commerce, it's a question of, is retail getting demand for space, etc. That's a big question. It depends on the buying attitude, etc. So yeah, that's the nutshell about real estate development. It's all about supply and demand of land to develop and demand from people moving in.
Right.
We need people. The
Right,
day
right.
we start to be like Chicago, we're in trouble. But as of now, we're doing really well.
Right. I think that probably the headquarters of Toyota moving here would be the best example, if you think, because of that. Like, we had so many of these employees that you just, all of a sudden just moved to Dallas, and I think in a city of Frisco, that probably would be the best example, you think?
Toyota coming in is something that we all talk about. That is necessarily great. That's a great thing, because it gave us a lot of advertisement about this area, that a large corporation, multinational corporation, is moving in. But what we're forgetting is there is hundreds of mid to small size companies that have also moved their headquarters or opened an office in the metro area. Boeing, for example, Boeing has an international division. They have an office now in the Frisco area, the same area that you just mentioned. So there's lots of other companies, not necessarily like Toyota moving their headquarters, large companies moving parts of their organization, and smaller companies actually moving completely to the metroplex.
Yeah. Dr. Sriram, we talked about just raising the capital. So is there any easy way to raise the capital? I'm very sure that there are so many different, difficulties or obstacles or hindrances that just may affect that one, or for an investor. So just a quick thoughts on that.
So raising capital if you have a property to mortgage, which is basically a single family owner trying to get a home loan or refinance, it's pretty easy. You have a property to mortgage, and you take it to a bank, they assess the value of the property and give a loan. With development, it's tricky. Not every bank funds development loans.
Right.
There are banks that specialize in giving out development loans. They look at your history. Have you developed properties before? Have you paid off those loans before? Just like we talked about credit history. So your history comes into play. What it means is, if you're new to the business, it gets a little bit harder to get that capital.
Right.
So what newer folks do is they join hands with somebody that has at least done one development. That way they can also have their old contacts that gave them the first loan, and that way, that's how people typically make a quick entry into real estate development.
So the private lender is one of the best options also for the big commercial property, just raising the capital for that.
Can you repeat your question, please?
So the private lenders would be one of the good options if you are investing in the commercial properties.
Yes. So private lenders come into play. So there's no one clear-cut way of raising capital for real estate development. There's private lenders. There are others that join in for equity. They're not necessarily lenders. They want part ownership of the development if they see potential from it. So there's several ways. And unlike residential mortgage loans where we can shop around, etc., that typically doesn't happen with large commercial real estate projects, because for the banker, it takes a lot of time to assess the viability and probability of success of the project. So, so you work with one lender. If it's a really large project, multiple lenders, and so on and so forth.
Wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Dr. Andrew, being an appraiser and underwriter, so what is your thoughts on that? Like, if you want to share something on the same question.
About raising capital?
Yes.
Oh, well, there's many different ways to raise capital. Some people just do it through family, business. Others through, borrowing money. There's different avenues to borrow money. But real estate's a very capital intensive, purchase in business, and so raising the capital is pretty important. Now, there's other ways you can go if you don't have a lot of capital. There's other ways to invest in real estate other than buying just, big properties. There are funds that invest in real estate, and you can invest smaller amounts in these funds and get exposure to real estate without actually having to own it. There's even publicly traded stocks on the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges called Reits, real estate investment trusts. And these trusts are essentially companies that invest mainly in real estate. And you can buy and sell the stocks in these companies just like you buy any other stock on the stock market, just like GM or Tesla. And one of the REITs is Lien Properties, which owns a lot of the big shopping malls across the country. So if you want to invest in shopping malls, you don't have to buy a full shopping mall. You can invest a small amount in a real estate investment trust. So those are good investment vehicles to know if you don't have a lot of cash, lying around to invest.
Right. Well, I know that it's exciting to invest in the properties. That it could bring a pleasure. At the same time, the risk is involved if it's not well planned. So I think So what are the risk assessments like before you even invest in the properties? I think Dr. Hansz, do you want to take that one, or Dr. Sriram, whichever is fine.
Andy.
Yeah, sure. Real estate. I love real estate, but it's very risky. There's lots of things that could happen that could go wrong with a real estate investment. You have physical things like anything from sinkholes to hail to tornadoes to earthquakes, just to bad soil that doesn't support the foundation. So there's many things physically that could go wrong with your property that can be a risk. But there's also, economic things that could affect the value of your real estate, such as interest rates. Okay, interest rates are going up. That makes it more expensive to buy properties, and your property value could go down when interest rates go up. Also, your local economy is very important to your real estate investment. So you need to know and understand your local economy very well. So if your local economy relies on Toyota, a Toyota headquarters, and Toyota decides to move their headquarters out of the area, that could have a big impact on the local real estate, because people are going to be moving out of the area because of the job loss, and that's not good for real estate. What's good for real estate is job creation.
Right.
And fortunately, in North Texas here, we've got a lot of job creation. So this makes it an excellent market to consider investing in, and also starting a career in, because there's lots of real estate activity going on in this particular market.
Well, that's really good to know. Dr. Sriram, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think one of the things is there's two types of risks, I would say. One, Dr. Hansz was talking about, is what we call liquidity risk. When you buy real estate, the good thing is it cash flows regularly if executed well. Bad thing is sometimes you might have all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
REITs, real estate investment trusts, you can find a lot of information about REITs on REIT.com, REIT.com.
Okay.
The REITs help you choose where you want to invest and how much you want to invest in.
Okay.
If you want to invest in warehouse REITs, for example, in 2019, warehouse REITs overall, they gained 50%. They made 50% return in 2019.
Right.
2020, they did just as well as in the stock market. 2019 was a breakout year for it, when the stock market didn't necessarily do all that well. It did well, 24%. So they can pick and choose where they want to invest in. I don't want to be in retail. They don't have to buy retail shares. So liquidity is pretty important. Buying and selling a shopping mall is no joke. It takes time to buy, and it takes a long time to sell. Whereas buying and selling a share of it is much easier.
Yeah.
Somebody has done the job of picking the right property, building it in the right location and everything. You're just going and buying it.
Yes.
So liquidity risk is eliminated because of REITs to some extent. The second is cash flow risk, which is what Dr. Hansz was mentioning. When I build an office, will I be able to rent it out? Commercial real estate is all about can I build something, commercial real estate development, or even residential for that matter, when I build something, can I either rent it out or sell it?
Right, right.
If you're building a product type that is not having much demand from a rental standpoint or a sales standpoint, then that's the bad way to go. So, for example, in our course, we teach market analysis to figure out, to project the supply and demand. Is demand there? Is demand going to come in the future? What about supply? Is there too much supply already? So there is liquidity risk, and then there is cash flow risk.
Right.
Once you build, you better hope that you can rent it out, sign a nice long-term lease on it. So that demand is driven again by people coming in. Real estate needs people. We're growing in population, and that's a gift for real estate in the Metroplex.
Right. So that you did say that the location matters as well. Dr. Andrew said that this is also one of the most important thing is, the location, and that also determines that whether we're going to get our return of investment or not. Am I right?
Yeah, the old real estate joke is what are the three most important things in a real estate investment, and it's location, location, location. So it's all about location in real estate, and that's what makes real estate unique. It's probably the only thing you can't move. You can't, if you don't like your neighborhood, you can't. It's very difficult to move your house or your apartment building or your office building. So and also because you have a fixed location, the area around you affects the value of your property. So if the area around you is nice and well developed and well kept, that's going to help support your property value. But if people let their property go, or it becomes a crime problem or nuisance, that's not going to be good for your property value, because you can't move your land, your real estate. So that's why location is so important in real estate, and it makes it really different from any other thing you can invest in or buy. Okay. I don't know of too many things we can't move, with a large truck, but we can't move our land.
Well, yes. So. Well, following that question, that I also want to ask, when we talked about that one, can we have all three of us on the screen, please? Just switch back to that. Okay, thank you. So we talked about the investment opportunities as well, and then also the location and all that, and talking about the foreclosure, bankruptcy, and all that one. So pandemic, how are we doing, as a matter of fact, like in DFW or Texas? How is the house market doing right now?
I think the housing market is so far doing well. One of the concerns was there was a moratorium on foreclosures, as well as evictions, and the evictions has been extended till, I believe, September. So as a result, we've not had that much in terms of foreclosures. We've had a double-digit increase. So 2014-15, we saw those double-digit. That was the last time we saw double-digit increases. Then the SALT Act was passed in the Tax Act when Donald Trump became president. And after that, because of property tax burdens, in the past, property tax could be written off, but after that, it slowed down a bit. You could see even within DFW in some of the good markets, homes took longer to sell. The sellers had to discount their prices a little bit. But again, last year, it was 14% increase in home values. So far, I've not seen anything that would, the demand is still healthy, and supply is still hard to come by. If any, COVID has made supply problems worse. We've still not, even pre-COVID, we were not building as many new homes as we were building in 2008, at the peak of the so-called national housing bubble. We were not, and we're still struggling. Part of it is one, labor shortage. In Texas, a lot of people ended up going to work for the oil industry because it was well paid. Shale oil prices were high, so the construction industry struggled to get labor. Labor was so expensive. The chief of the Texas Construction Association. He would say, you know, there's a doctor and his wife, they had a plumbing problem at their house, you know, sink was leaking. Call a plumber to fix it, comes in, 15 minutes, fixes it, gives a bill for $300. And the doctor goes, well, gee, I'm a doctor. I don't even make this kind of money. And the plumber goes, well, I never made this kind of money either when I was a doctor. So, so labor, I think labor problems were bad back then with COVID.
Yes.
You know, building, you know, restrictions in the workplace and everything has made supply problems worse from that point on. So given this much demand coming in, we're able to somehow manage to put up a lot of apartments in the Metroplex and unfortunately not a lot of houses. And as a result, home prices are, you know, if you're already owning a house, you know, your home values have gone up quite well so far. So COVID, bottom line, COVID has not made a dent on home prices so far.
So, okay. Well, that's actually wonderful to know, because I know that, you know, Texas has its own issues, but apart from all that, and it hit the double whammy of a snowstorm as well as the pandemic, I think if we didn't get affected, I think it's a blessing for sure. So moving on to let's talk a little bit about the commercial property, you know, the investment as well. And, you know, what is the current status? Like, you know, how is it affecting on the commercial real estate investment? You know, do we still have a more demand on construction and development, or, you know, like in DFW and in Dallas-Fort Worth, as well as in the state of Texas, and maybe in USA also, like, if you may. Dr. Andrew, you want to answer that?
Yeah. The demand, a friend of mine was asked this. I wish I could take credit for coining this, but a friend of mine was asking, you know, where is demand good in real estate? And he said, beds and sheds. So what is done very well in most markets, again, going back to all markets are different. And, you know, during the pandemic and right now, there's markets doing well, markets doing bad. But in general, anything with having to do with beds, like multifamily, like Dr. V was saying, or single family residential has been doing very well, and there's still very good demand. And also sheds is industrial property and warehouses. So one of the things the pandemic has done is it's increased demand for online shopping, and that increases demand for warehouse real estate and places to store all these online goods and distribution centers where all these online goods are shipped out from. So every retail and office has been more of a either up or down depending on the market that you're in. Retail in general has probably suffered, and it's kind of a risky area to invest in, but that's where you might find the best deals and potentially some good returns. But it's very risky because of a lot of the shopping, you know, has shifted to online, and more online shopping, the less brick and mortar retail space we need. So that could be a potential area where people might bargain hunt and find good opportunities or possibly lose money. The office market is also an interesting market, and some office markets have held up pretty well, but other office markets, you know, like New York City and some major cities have not done so well. And it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward if people go back to their offices. If they don't, you know, where are they going to work? Is that going to increase more demand for residential home offices, which might further increase demand for residential space? And also, are we going to use more office space now because we're going to socially distance when we go to the office? Are the employers going to have the cubicles, you know, one right next to another, or are they going to spread out the employees a little bit more, which will increase the demand for office space? So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens in the office area.
Yeah. So one of the good things that I have to say is, you know, like, because everything is you know, like coming as a 3D, and you know, like, and we really are. I feel that we're not really missing much, because even if you want to go see a property, I think everything is just like, you're sitting at home and just, looking at what you want to see. And that is one of the best thing that I have experienced when you look at the property. And I think probably it has not created much of a, hindrance from people buying the houses or any of the properties, which is really a great advantage. But another thing that what I wanted to ask you all is, so how, like Dr. Sriram mentioned, that some people want to buy the land and keep it. So if it's a future plan to develop a commercial, any of the property there, so how do we know, other than the city that you are living, and then you are actually going there and say that, okay, so how do I know how the commercial marketing is, the investment, that why would I buy it? Like, whether is there a best way to measure it? Like, whether the market is strong, weak, should I not? So how do we know that? Dr. Sriram, you want to take it?
Land purchasing land and waiting and hoping that you can develop it someday, that is when we teach that is the riskiest in real estate investing. So we call that land speculation. So one of the things is there's a viewer that's asking a question that somebody has bought 82 acres of land for a park in southern Dallas. So so the question is, if somebody were to do this in the southern Dallas part, growth is happening the other way. So the first big risk of buying land and hoping that development is coming your way is you better forecast it right.
Right.
First thing I would look for is, are there highways coming your way? Are there companies and other offices nearby? Other thing, unfortunately, is schools. Are there good schools nearby for families to move in, etc.? These are increasingly happening. It's almost becoming a self-fulfilling proposition, in the sense that there is companies there, so developers are looking further north, and then companies are even moving further north, and so the development is going the other way. So just to think about the Metroplex, one statement I could make is buying land north could be less risky compared to buying land south. Because if you just look at the trend over the last many years, it's been, again, it's relative terms. Land speculation is the riskiest of bets that you can make, hoping that something will come. It could go in the other direction, across, missing your property. So first is access, second is demand. Those are the two things that I would look at to ensure that my risk is as low as possible.
Correct. Well, that's really good to know. And we will also talk a little bit about, as we go further, that the economic impact, that how much and then to what extent that we are experiencing in this. But before that, there's one of the things that we must talk about is the interest rate. There are a couple of things that probably a lot of people are having a hard time differentiating, or how to choose, is between the fixed rate and the floating rate. So let's talk a little bit about that one. So what is the difference between both of them, and how different are they when you choose the investment? So one of you can take that. That'll be great.
Can I take this, Andy?
Yeah, you teach the real estate finance class, so I was hoping you would take it. So go ahead, Dr. V.
Okay. So I'll do my best here. Try. So fixed interest mortgage rates is something we all know. For the residential part, it's a 30-year loan or a 15-year loan that we've heard of. There's a lot in between too. You can get a 20-year loan, you can also get a 10-year loan, and so on and so forth. So what is guaranteed in these loans is your monthly payment is fixed for the most part, unless you take what is called a graduated payment mortgage loan, where that changes. Your interest rate is fixed throughout the life of the loan. And for most loans, the payment is also fixed throughout the life of the loan, which is what we always do. Variable payment loan comes in many formats. They call it 3-1 loans, 5-1 ARM. They're called ARMs, adjustable rate mortgage loans. around 2012, when I was living in Colorado, I was able to obtain an 8-1 ARM. So what that means is it's the interest rate that you get at the beginning is fixed for 8 years. And then that 1 means that it changes every year, every 1 year, every year thereafter. After 8 years, it'll keep changing. So I had 2 choices. One, if I get that loan, I better refinance it before the variable rate kicks in.
Okay.
Or I better, not even bother with it.
Right.
So I teach real estate finance. It's ironical that I advise people to really be careful when choosing that, and I was the first one to choose that. The good news is ARM loans are kept by the banks mostly, and so the processing will be pretty quick.
Right.
So in 2 weeks, I saw a house, and the current owner of the house, it was a rental property, and he had a really bad lending arrangement. He was paying 7 or 8% loan on his property, and he was getting squeezed, and he wanted to get out of it. And he said, 2 weeks, I can't wait for a month. So within 2 weeks, how can I get a loan and close on that house? I thought it was a good property to buy and everything, and I went for an ARM. A year later, so I remember this was 2012 at 3.85% adjustable rate loan. A year later, this is less than a year later, I was able to get a fixed rate at 3.85%, and I refinanced it into the fixed rate for another 30 years. So you better, that way that gives you the option. Otherwise, when interest rate starts to go up, like that guy, I would be forced to sell.
Right.
If your rents are not helping you pay off that loan, then you'll get into trouble. So I would recommend people that are thinking about long term to go with a fixed rate loan. If you have short term, if you're sure that you're going to liquidate, get rid of that property in the short term, getting an ARM is okay. But again, ARMs are risky for the borrower and much better for the lender. So banks love to give you an adjustable rate mortgage loan.
Right. So that really explains, so that the people who would like to looking for the stable investment with their tight budget. So probably that is the fixed rate is the best option, if I could say. Right. Okay. So
I've always heard some people say, I have this big feeling that interest rates are going to go down. I don't want to get stuck in a fixed rate loan. If I get an ARM, then the rates adjust and I'll get a lower interest rate. But you have 30 years. If somebody is going to come here and tell me that I can predict that interest rates are going to be low for the next 30 years, or as a borrower, I'm going to be correct in predicting interest rates for the next 30 years, I'm just going to laugh at them.
Right.
So if think about yourself, pre-COVID, do you think you could have predicted interest rates would drop another 1%? In 2019, if I would have asked that question, it did, right? So the interest rates are harder to predict. Even you can predict stock prices. Interest rates are much harder to predict. So ARMs are not for the ones that think about really long-term and steady pace of income, etc.
Yes, there is also belief that the economic the ups and downs will not completely affect the real estate investment. Is this true?
Ups and downs in terms of
economic conditions or the market, the difference in the market, like going the fluctuation that does not even affect the real estate investment. Is that true?
Economic fluctuations happen, throughout the year, from year to year, etc. Real estate investments, the good and bad thing about it is it's long term.
Right.
When you think about real estate development takes 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
A large real estate development takes 2 to 3 years, and so you're looking at the real estate developers and investors should think about the long term. Real estate goes through cycles. It could match the economic cycle. It need not match the economic cycle. And as Dr. Hansz mentioned, real estate is local. When Dallas is booming, I could say to use this example, Chicago is not booming. Chicago is declining. They're losing people and we're getting them. Right. So economic cycles is a very broad term. Economic cycles are different from area to area, and real estate investors are always, investors as well as developers are thinking long term. So if things come back to normal in the next 3-4 years, they'll still go ahead and develop. Because now if you see something dropping, as Dr. Hansz was mentioning, retail is not doing well, you get good prices. If you're trying to buy when everything is booming, you're going to pay a pretty hefty price. And when things go down, your rents and all those things may not be good enough to make that hefty mortgage payment because you bought something at a pretty high price.
Right. So I also want to ask Dr. Hansz is, so what are some of the downsides of like investing in the commercial property when something like this happened, like, especially in the state of Texas, that, that we have so many different things to consider?
Well, again, it all gets back to the local economic base. And is that economic base creating jobs, or are they losing jobs? And you want to invest in a economic base that's creating jobs, because more jobs means more people, which means more people need a place to live, more people need a place to shop, more office spaces needed, and more industrial spaces needed. So really the secret in real estate, to whether my property value is going to go up or down, you have to understand your local economic base and the health of that local economic base.
Right. So following that question, let me also ask you that, that how different, that what we talked about, the multifamily and industrial sectors that are doing pre and pandemic, that can you compare a little bit?
Well, again, as I said before, beds and sheds have done well during the pandemic, and office and retail have been a mixed bag, and a lot of office and retail markets have suffered much. So I think beds and sheds sums it up.
And I think I agree with Dr. Hansz. But the silver lining here is Dallas office market is improving in the sense that workers are coming back to work face-to-face in Dallas much more than other places, simply because we all drive our own cars and everything. We don't take public transit. So in places where public transit is predominant in larger cities, they're struggling to get workers back into the offices. And so if any, again, as Dr. Hansz said, we're still struggling with office occupancy, but we're ahead of, 2 weeks ago, there was a study that was mentioning this. We're ahead of the rest of the nation in terms of workers coming back. And so if I were to extrapolate that, I think before anybody else starts to see increase in office demand, I believe the Metroplex, DFW Metroplex will, simply because of the way we're structured. A lot of us drive to work and not take, public transit.
Right. So
so the government can affect real estate, very much. And for example, Texas, the governor has lifted the mask law, and businesses can have 100% occupancy, where other states are still kind of under lockdown and have severe restrictions. And this can affect. So one of the things when you invest in real estate, the government can affect your real estate, the value of your real estate, and how you use it too. So that's something you got to keep in mind.
Sometimes it plays a critical role. Yes, I agree. Definitely. It definitely makes a huge difference. So I know that in the beginning, Dr. Sriram mentioned about the former president changing the tax law. So so what was an impact on state tax and the property tax by changing the law? So can we just a little bit go over that one?
No, they didn't do at the federal level. They don't have much to do with state tax or the property taxes. Property tax were driven by local economics. State tax at the state level. What they did at the federal level with the SALT, they call it SALT, state and local taxes, is that they put a cap. They said you cannot write off more than 10,000 together in state and local taxes is property taxes and everything else, sales tax, etc., that you pay. So in Texas, we don't have a state tax. So anybody that has a home that has a property tax of more than $10,000,
Right.
They could only write off $10,000 now. All of a sudden, that change happened.
Mm-hmm.
So homes that were above, for example, in Texas, in the Metroplex, it's 2.25%, 2.1 to 2.25%, depending on where you live. That's the tax rate. 2.25% of your property value, assessed property value.
Mm-hmm.
And that means approximately if your property is worth more than $430,000, you're gonna meet that $10,000 property tax threshold. Homes above that level,
Right.
they're the ones that sort of slowed down in terms of selling in the Metroplex. But everything below 400, we've been having a really, really healthy demand for that for the last, I would say, 10 years. The demand on those have never gone down.
Mm-hmm.
The supply on those has been a challenge. It's been very poor. It's hard to find a home
Mm-hmm.
in the 300s, 200s range. That's the part that's been hard. And they have not been affected. So there's a segmentation. Above 400, the liquidity of those types of homes slowed down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that sector now, we don't have much supply coming in, and demand has basically always been high, and now it's compared to supply, it just looks big, really big, and so all the price levels are doing well at this point.
That's wonderful to know. So we also we have some more time that let's talk about the real estate program in UT Arlington. I know it is very different than any other university, and it's really great. So if you can just give a little insight of that one for students who are applying for that, that would be a real good information for them.
This is a program that welcomes people from all backgrounds. We have folks that have backgrounds in engineering. There are some from civil engineering and construction that are in the program. Mm-hmm. There are those that are in the arts discipline that had an interest in real estate. They're learning about it. So it's basically, if your bachelor's degree is not finance or real estate, that shouldn't be a reason for you to stop thinking about real estate. You can get a master's degree in real estate. We teach everything from the basics in this program. Before I even explain the program, where does this program take you? Mm-hmm. We have historically placed people in places like the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The president and the vice president were both UTA graduates, College of Business graduates, and they are now in charge of commercial real estate development at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. And a lot of students have gone on to work as land developers for home builders and places like Hillwood, who are big commercial players in the Metroplex. Mm-hmm. A lot of them have gone towards development. Some have gone towards the banking sector. In commercial real estate, loan foreclosure is not a simple process. For residential real estate, you default on your mortgage, your home gets picked up by the bank, resold, and the process is fairly quick. In commercial, if let's say you have a retail strip mall that the owner is not able to make the loans, a couple of tenants have left because their business failed. What is the bank going to do? Suddenly the bank is going to become the landlord? They try to work with the landlord. So there's companies that specialize in this that are there in the Metroplex. So the banking sector for commercial real estate is pretty big. So that's one area that people have gone to work for. Mm-hmm. And some of them have, been hotel developers that have gotten out of this program, hotel developers and investors. Mm-hmm. Tanmay Patel, one of the students in the program, his family has been in this business. Rutaj Bhatt, these are some of the students that are doing hotel real estate development right now. They find lots, build hotels, and they know that business left and right. So they were all graduates from this program. So these are some of the possibilities. You can go work for a bank, be a developer at a large development firm. You can be in charge of commercial real estate, leasing, and some of the land development, etc., like the ones at DFW Airport. Or you can go start as an analyst or an investor entrepreneur. So these are all the possibilities out of this program. We primarily focus on commercial real estate. We do talk about residential real estate development.
Sure.
After that, it's a matter of selling that home and you're done. Basically, that's the completion of the cycle. In commercial, you got to build and you don't necessarily sell. Sometimes you sell if you find a good buyer. Sometimes you keep the property and you start leasing it.
Okay.
So it's a fairly longer cycle with commercial real estate than residential. So our students learn real estate finance, ways to raise capital, what are the different financing possibilities available, etc. They learn about real estate valuation. They value commercial properties. We're not big fans of textbooks, both Dr. Hansz and I and whoever else is teaching in our program. We have practitioners and teaching in the program and us, and we have a approach which is very hands-on. For example, in my valuation investments class, when students do valuation, it's actual properties that are listed for sale. I give them the students and they go value it. There's an asking price there and they compare it with their valuation.
Yes.
Is it close? Is it far away? So it's very hands-on. In other words, when you get out of this program, you will be, able to work from day one on the market. It's not a place where you don't have to go get trained and things like that. Finance investments, development, and we have appraisal, and we have real estate is getting very technologically adept, and we have programming classes. We have Argus Enterprise. These are industry standard commercial real estate valuation softwares, and students learn how to program in that software to do valuation, etc. And I think most importantly, the gem of our program now is Dr. Hansz's class. This is the first class where students get a good idea about what real estate is all about. Dr. Hansz, you want to mention about your urban plan and ULI, etc.?
Sure. Yes. We do a project called the Urban Plan Project, which is a real estate development simulation where students work in development teams of 5 because real estate's really a team sport. We work in teams because real estate's so complex. No one can be an expert in all areas of real estate. So the students work in teams. They're assigned specific roles, including site planner, financial analyst, marketing director, neighborhood liaison, and city liaison. And they have to redevelop a urban area and come up with a complete physical, financial, and social plan for this development and present it to a mock city council consisting of local experts that are members of the Urban Land Institute, the ULI. And by the way, some of your listeners might be interested in the Urban Land Institute because it's a huge international real estate organization of brokers, developers, planners, architects, you name it. Anybody in real estate is probably probably a member of the Urban Land Institute, and they have local districts, which are chapters or local bodies that have meetings, and it's great networking to learn more about real estate. But the Urban Land Institute comes into our class. They help the students with their development plan, and they also judge the development plan at the very end. So it's about as close as you can get to doing a real development without putting money on the line. So it's a great learning experience before you go out there, because one of our instructors, his favorite joke is, what's the fastest way to make $1 million in real estate? And the answer is to start with 2 million. So you can make a lot of money in real estate and have a great career, but if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not educated and you don't assess the risks properly, you can also lose a lot of money in real estate. So that's why I think education is so important, because we know that real estate markets don't always go up. They can go down, and you got to be smart enough to recognize when to invest and when not to invest.
Correct. So So, well, those were all great, and I also believe the Texas Real Estate Commission also is part of the organization that also supports this program for students to get the certification and more. Am I right?
Well, the Texas Real Estate Commission, TREC, sponsors the licensing for real estate salespeople and brokers, and some of our students go down that path. And we also recommend to many of our students to pursue the license or the salesperson or broker's license. It's a great credential if you're in real estate.
Right.
But some of our students do go on to the real estate sales or brokerage licensing process.
Okay. So let us also take a couple of questions from our audience, if it's okay with you. So let me go ahead and Lauren Michelle, that what about buying or investing in tax liens to build your real estate portfolio? So I think she was probably talking about when we talked about the investor, like 82 acres of land for a park in the southern Dallas. That was the following question that she was asking. So, Dr. Sriram, you want to take it?
So tax lien properties.
Mm-hmm.
Tax lien property, again, simply is somebody has not paid their property taxes, and so the county is putting it up for sale. So again, real estate is a complex financial entity. Each house is a very complex financial entity. Some may have second loans if they're not paying property taxes, which is somewhat the cheapest of the tax of the liability they have, and they're owning it. What else is missing? What else have they not paid?
Right.
And then the other issue is if they're not paying taxes, they're probably not paying their mortgage. The most important thing probably is they're not probably also maintaining their property, be it a residential or a commercial one. So when you go with a tax lien, yes, you might get a discount, but you may want to make sure to look at all the other aspects, because it's highly likely if they're missing out on property taxes, they're missing out on a host of other things,
right,
payments, as well as the hidden things, which is much, much more important. That could become a devil down the line, which is property maintenance. And
right.
So basically you have to make sure to ensure all those other things are taken care of, or account for those liens to be taken care of.
Right.
Because if you just buy it from the county, practically somebody else can come in through their lien and they can take it back from you if you're not taking care of those.
Yes.
Those
I think
payments.
has that, like, what are the benefits or the consequences of declaring that homestead exemption for the homeowners? So that's probably was.
Homestead exemption basically is one of those things that we get in Texas, where if you're the primary owner of the property, if that's your primary home, then they give certain discount on property taxes, an exception on property taxes. So it's a good thing. I don't see anything negative about it. And when you move within the Metroplex, you have to declare, it's state law, you have to declare that if you change your primary home, and let's say keep the first home that you moved in as a primary home converted into a rental, you have to tell them that I am transferring my primary home to the next one, and that is now something else. That's not my primary home. So they will transfer your homestead exemption to the next primary home, and so on and so forth. So homestead exemption is a good thing from a tax standpoint, property tax standpoint.
Okay, Dr. Hansz, let me ask you also this. I think this is one of the questions from student, I believe in. Can a student also work towards getting their sales agent or broker license through the real estate program that UTA offers? I mean, the sales agent certificate issued by TREC.
Yeah, well, our education helps the students learn the things necessary to become a real estate salesperson or broker, and a lot of our students do pursue those credentials. But the state of Texas is responsible for the licensing aspect of it, and they run and set the requirements. But our students can submit their transcripts, and the state may take some of our courses and count that towards their education requirements. And what they learn here will definitely help them on the salesperson and broker's exam, which you have to take. Another big hurdle is that first you become a salesperson. Okay, so that's the first step, because a salesperson has to work for a broker. Okay, a salesperson can't be on their own. They have to work under and kind of be sponsored by an existing licensed broker. But after a certain number of years of experience and taking another test and more education, a salesperson can take the broker's exam and become a broker, and then they can go out on their own or hire other salespeople. So, but the salesperson's license is a great credential. Even some of our students that don't go into sales and brokerage have the salesperson's license as a credential that they've passed this test and they're serious about real estate. So we do encourage a lot of our students, not just the ones going into sales and marketing, to consider the salesperson's license and brokerage. There's also some other great designations in real estate, and that our program can help the students with gain the knowledge and some of the experience, such as the for real estate valuation, there's the MAI designation. For real estate sales and brokerage and investment, there's the CCIM designation. For property management, and there's lots of job demand in property management. All these buildings that are being built in the Metroplex, they need to be managed after they're built. So property management's a good area to maybe break into the business. But there's the CPM, Certified Property Manager, designation that our students can pursue also. So there's plenty of credentials in real estate, and our program helps with the basic knowledge for most of those credentials.
Okay, probably we're going to take just one more question. So this one is from Javian Lee. If someone was new to real estate and were in the DFW area, would you recommend for them to invest? Any recommendations?
Well, follow the jobs.
Study that local economy, and right. And sheds and beds. Sheds and beds have been doing well. Yeah. So
that's where people want to live, and
as long as we keep growing,
yeah, that's where people want to live, and that's where they want to send their kids to school too, and that's where they're going to shop, and so that's where demand is going to be, and the warehouse nearby is going to be where they're going to get supplied all their e-commerce items. So follow the jobs. That's basically the key in the Metroplex or any other area for investment.
Right. Well, if there is one advice that before we leave that you would like to give your audience, what that would be? Dr. Andrew, we'll start with.
Yeah, happy to start. Real estate, I'm glad I got into the real estate business and real estate area. It's lots of opportunity. It can be very hard work. It can be tough to break into, but once you break into it, there's lots of areas that you can do very well and have a very successful and lucrative career. But the key is, I think, is education, is to be smart and not make a lot of mistakes, because mistakes can be very costly in real estate. So you want to learn as much as you can before you start putting your money on the line and choosing a career, because again, it can be a very lucrative, very rewarding business, but it can be hard to break in without the education, and you can make some serious mistakes if you don't know what you're doing. So get as much education as you can, and also try to find a mentor who's done things before that you can learn from and team up with before you start going off on your own. And so if you're into tax liens, find someone who does invest in tax liens and try to team up with them and watch what they do and figure out what the key risks are, and learn from their mistakes and their history and experience. So I think education and mentorship are two very important things to be successful in the real estate business.
I think the other point that I wanted to bring up is, since there's a little bit of a introduction to the MS real estate program, I think education is important. Outside of the US, it's extremely hard, especially in Asia, where the population is booming, the real estate demand is booming. There is little to no real estate programs in there. They generate thousands, hundreds of thousands of civil engineers and construction professionals, but not real estate. What I mean, what is the difference? In countries like Asia, the real estate job is done by the civil engineer for the most part, costing and not just construction cost estimation, management, and all that, even beyond who's leasing it and so on and so forth. So there's a big gap in there. Our program bridges that gap, especially for those international students, prospective international folks who are thinking about this. We are teaching here the business aspects of real estate, what makes for sound real estate investment, what makes for a sound real estate development idea, etc. What are the foundations for those? So the key to think about this is for those of you viewers that are from outside of the United States, there's very few real estate programs outside of the US, and we teach the real estate discipline from a business standpoint. There's always electives where you can learn about construction management, et cetera, in our program, but the core is focused on the business aspects, which I think is not available once you leave the US shores as much.
Right. Well,
So,
that was really a wonderful information that you both shared, and I would like to thank you both, Dr. Hansz, Dr. Wee. We really had a great time and got a lot of information from you, and thank you so much for spending the time and your valuable experience with us. And I'm sure that all our audience really enjoyed and got a lot of informative hour with us. So especially, I would like to thank SSRE UTA President Canty for connecting and then making this possible also. And this was a wonderful show, and thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining, and hope you all had a great fun and informative session, like I said. And do join me again on Saturday the 26th with another event, the continuation of our International Women's Month, celebrating again women. And so we will be joined by Mrs. India International. So till then, stay cool, stay connected, and don't forget to watch Global Gupshup again. And thank you, everyone, and especially my tech team and the tech head, Jen, for making this one a smooth show. Thank you so much, and see you soon.